stand up and tell me your name and where you go to school. And hold on, I'm gonna come next to you. This is fun. This is like Oprah. All right.
Hello, my name is Gabby. I go to International. And what made you want to switch from medical to author?
Gabby asked a great question. So she said, what made you want to switch from being a doctor to being an author? Do you guys think you can do more than one thing in your life? Yes. Do you think you can do more than one thing at the same time? Yes, so I'm still totally a doctor. I still see patients. My clinic is at the farmer's market on the second floor, the Hurley Children's Clinic. Does anybody go there? Has anybody been there before? Is anybody a patient there? We won't share any HIPAA violations. No private information. Yeah, I'm still a doctor. And I still work with Michigan State University, where I'm a professor, so I get to teach people. I work with all those awesome people back there where we do some really cool health promoting things that's not just about taking care of people in a clinic, but also about doing big programs like the Flint Registry, where we can take care of a population. So I didn't think I was gonna write a book. So I didn't think the author was ever gonna be part of my job. When I was a little kid, I loved to write and I loved to read, and I actually wanted to be a journalist when I grew up. That was like what I wanted to be, maybe in like 8th grade or early high school. In high school, I was part of our school newspaper. My senior year, I was like the editor of the school newspaper, so I loved to write. When I went to college, I took a lot of writing classes, and I actually stayed another year in college to take creative writing classes. To this day, I think I grew up in my local library. Like, I was always at the library. I can still smell the library, like, of where I grew up. Like, I had a smell. This one's beautiful and clean and smells lovely. But mine smelled like microfiches, which you don't even know about. Okay, I'm not even talking about it. All the old people. So, like, reading was was my joy and my escape when I was a kid. And to this day, I read a lot. I think I read about a book a week. And there's all kinds of different books. And some of it, I used to read a lot of heavy books, like a lot of nonfiction and a lot of historical stuff. And sometimes that was heavy and hard, especially when the world has been really hard recently. So now I read a lot of silly books. I read like murder mysteries and romance books, but I still love to read. And then when the Flint water crisis became a national story, okay? So, after my research kind of, there was a lot of media that came to Flint, and as you know, it became a national story, and people kept approaching me. They're like, oh my gosh, Dr. Mona, you should write a book. And my answer to all of them was, go the F away. Like, there's no way, I'm so busy. Like, I'm a doctor, I'm a mom, like, I have all these things that I do. I can't write a book, there's no way. Like, I'm working. I spent so much, like time uncovering the crisis that I had neglected so many other things that I was doing. And I kept telling people, and like people I never heard of, like agents and publishers and screenwriters and editors, they're like, you should write a book. I'm like, go away. There is no way that I'm going to write a book. But there was like this little voice on my shoulder that kept turning to me and saying, Mona, you love reading, you love writing. You should really write a book. I'm like, stop, I can't, there's no way I'm gonna write a book. And then pure serendipity, I was at an event in Washington, D.C., and some guy came up to me, and he's like, have you thought about writing a book? I'm like, go away, like I'm not writing a book. And he introduced himself. He shared that he was an editor, a publisher, at Penguin Random House, which is one of our biggest publishing companies in the country. And that he was in charge of this like division at Penguin Random House that only published authors of color and only published social justice stories. And he shared with me the other authors and books that he has brought to life. Ta-Nehisi Coates, an acclaimed Black author who wrote Between the World and Me. Trevor Noah, who wrote Born a Crime, which is fantastic if you haven't read. Brian Stevenson, who wrote Just Mercy, Ibram Kendi, who's written many books, Stamped from the Beginning, and most recently How to Be an Anti-Racist. So he was telling me about all these authors and books that he has worked with, and I'm like, oh my God, I love these books. I love these authors, and it made me realize that writing a book with him wouldn't be about selling books, but it would be about sharing a message, a really important message rooted in social justice, rooted in how to make the world a better place. So my editor, Chris Jackson, was actually here at the library, not this library, the old library. So when my book came out, he came to Flint, and we had a book event at the library. And he is brilliant. I adore him, and he kind of helped me decide to become an author and write this book. Writing a book was really hard. I think it was harder than going to medical school. I had a word count limit. It was 75,000 words. And I just kept writing and writing and writing and writing. And then I was at like 90,000 words. And my editor, Chris, is like, you need to turn in this book. And I'm like, I'm not done. He's like, you need to stop writing and turn it in. I started writing, I had an outline, like you guys write papers, you have an outline. I had an outline, and what I intended to write was just the Flint story. That's the book I was planning to write, this firsthand account of being in this crazy, crazy crisis. But as I started to write kind of that Flint story, that detective story, it became really clear that I could not tell you like why I did what I did in Flint without telling you a little bit more about who I am. So the very first sentence of the book says, I am Iraqi, an immigrant, born somewhere else. So it kind of morphed into this book about me and where I came from and my family, and it has a lot of history and a lot of Flint history and Michigan history and lead history and public health history. There's lots of rabbit holes in this book. I have a few favorite rabbit holes. One is I talk a lot about the Flint sit-down strike, which happened in the 1930s, which really birthed the middle class in America. It's an amazing, amazing point of pride that we have in the city. And I talk about the women leaders of that strike. There was this amazing Flint badass woman named Janora Dollinger Johnson. I read so much about her, and she's in here for like a paragraph. There's another section in the book about another one of my heroes, a woman named Alice Hamilton, who a century ago was our nation's expert on lead. A century ago, and she went after General Motors when they were putting lead in gasoline. She became the very first woman professor at Harvard. She worked with Jane Addams at the Settlement House in Chicago. She's an incredible, incredible woman leader, and nobody really knows about her. And I think I read so many books about her, and she's in here for a paragraph. So there was a lot of research. There was a lot of rabbit holes in the story. So this book took me 2 years to write. It was on top of everything else. It was on top of work. It was on top of family. And then when it came out, I felt like only my mom would read it. Like, it's so weird. Like, it's about Flint, and it's about me, and it has all this history, because history is so important. And it's been amazing to have so many folks have read the book and have enjoyed the book. Oprah on the cover said it had the gripping intrigue of a Grisham thriller. That's amazing. It became a New York Times notable book. It's been the common book or the state book for 3 states. It was Michigan's book, the Great Michigan Read, as well as Maryland's book and Rhode Island's book. Dozens of universities choose this as their freshman common read. So it has been amazing and bizarre, and not what I thought I would do. But it is, I haven't given up medicine at all. This is kind of another hat that I get to wear, which has been such an unexpected and fun hat. So life will take you in different directions. Sometimes you just have to kind of grab the ball and run with it. We think that we want to be something, but it's okay to take detours in life. It's okay to turn left and turn right when an opportunity presents itself. So that was a really long answer to your question, but thank you for that question. Other questions? Yes, hold on, I'm coming.
My name is Destiny. I'm a junior at my middle college. I have two questions. One of them is has there been any updated research on the little kids who was affected by the water crisis? And do you believe that the reason a lot of adolescents in Flint has behavioral problems is due to the water crisis?
Destiny has a great question about kind of like what happened. And I think it's probably the most common question I get asked right now, especially as we're commemorating the 10 years of the water switch. So April 25, 2014 is when that fateful decision was made to change our water. And we are kind of next week is that 10-year mark from the water switch. So people want to know, like, how are people doing? How are the kids doing, especially that were exposed? And do you think that some of the things that we are seeing are because of the water crisis? Lead exposure. So you guys tell me, do you guys know what lead does to people? Just scream out whatever you, why is lead bad? So when I heard there was lead in the water, I freaked out. I'm like, what? There's lead in the water? Like, no. Like I had heard for a year and a half about like color and odor and taste and bacteria. Patients were complaining about like rashes and different things. But when I heard that there was lead in the water, that is when my life changed. Why? Why did my life change when I heard there was lead in water? What does lead do? Affects your brain, affects your cognition, which is your thinking. What else? Affects your skin? Not exactly. Lots of other things in the water were causing a lot of the skin problems. What else does lead do? There was a lot of stuff in this water. Lead was just one of the things in this water. So you kind of touched on the most important thing. So lead is a neurotoxin, which means it attacks the nervous system. And we've known about lead for a really long time. I told you about my bestie, Alice Hamilton, a century ago. She was our nation's lead expert. And when General Motors wanted to put lead in gasoline, she's like, you can't do that. You will create a global public health disaster. Lead is a poison. And General Motors is like, oh, but we don't have any alternative, and we think lead is a gift from God. Legit, they said gift from God. And they put lead in gasoline and silenced her and silenced the activists and said she was hysterical and sexist and that she should go back to knitting. All true stories. So we've known for a long time lead is bad. In the Roman Empire, they used lead in their pipes, in their aqueducts. You can actually go see them, they're preserved. And there's actually theories that hypothesize the demise of the Roman Empire is because they used so much lead. They also put lead in their food, which was not a good idea, as like a salt. So lead has been studied for a long time. We've known that it's not safe for a long time. It attacks the nervous system, so it impacts cognition, which is like thinking. It impacts behavior, can lead to kind of developmental problems, behavioral problems. It impacts things like growth and hearing issues. Kids exposed to lead, especially when they're really young, as adults, can have problems like kidney disease and high blood pressure and gout and even things like early dementia. So there's amazing science by amazing scientists that have taught us all these things that why lead is bad, which is why the American Academy of Pediatrics and all the big kind of bodies of medicine and public health have told us that there's no safe level of lead. Have you guys heard that there's no safe level of lead? Like you're not supposed to have lead anywhere. We put it in things. What else did we put it in besides plumbing? Paint. What else? Shingles? Tiles, probably. Roadies? Roads? Maybe, I'm not sure. Probably. Okay, okay. Okay. This guy's amazing. Insulation. Okay. Batteries. What else? What else is lead still in? What's that?
Some cosmetics.
Cosmetics. A lot of cosmetics, foreign cosmetics, cool. Lead is we put it in paint and cosmetics because it makes colors brighter and it stays for a long time. We talked about gasoline. General Motors put lead in gas. You go to the gas station, it's unleaded. That's because we put lead in it We put lead in it to fix this, do you guys know why they put lead in it, in lead and gasoline? Tetraethyl lead, to fix a problem called engine knocking. Does anyone know what this? It's the loud noise that happens when, yeah. Good, so when fuel and air mixed, they make a loud noise, and they said that the only kind of chemical that fixes this is lead and gasoline, tetraethyl lead, and General Motors had a patent on it. One of their lead scientists was Kettering, who was a big champion of lead and gasoline, and that's how kind of we got lead and gasoline and literally contaminated the whole earth with lead and gasoline. Okay, so bullets, right? Which I've taken care of children who have been shot and have lead poisoning because their bullets keep releasing lead, and they haven't been able to be removed from their bodies. Did we talk about fishing tackle? So there's lead in fishing tackle, weights. So, you know, we finally we stopped putting lead in things because of amazing work by moms and activists and dads and scientists, despite the terrible kind of evilness of the lead industry. Who kept attacking the scientists and blaming the victims in a very racist way, saying, oh, you're not clean enough, you're not washing your hands enough, it's your fault that you have lead poisoning. This is a strategy that is kind of persistent through time, where they blame the victims for their problems, but really it's industries and big forces that created these problems. So we finally restricted lead in gasoline, and in paint, and in plumbing. It was lead pipes, we restricted it in 1986. But did we take it out of those things that we had already put in them? No, like we stopped putting in new lead, but underneath layers of paint in a house is lead paint. And in the dirt on the roads, especially by highways, the soil, it's contaminated with lead from gasoline. And delivering our drinking water throughout this country, we have a lot of lead plumbing. Like we did here in Flint. So we may have restricted its use, but we haven't taken it out of things. We're doing a little better. We're doing more of that now. So I'm going to get back to your question. I know you had a good question. So where was I? So yeah, we have a lot of lead and a lot of stuff, right? And the hard thing with lead, so it causes all these bad things. But the problem is, it doesn't cause these bad things right away. Okay, I wish they did. I wish as a pediatrician, a kid who was exposed to lead would come in with like a glow-in-the-dark purple spots. Then I'd be like, oh, okay, I know that they're being exposed to lead. We can do something about it. But it's what we call a silent pediatric epidemic. It's one of the reasons my book is called What the Eyes Don't See, because we actually don't see lead poisoning right away. We don't see it. Just like we don't see a lot of environmental health issues. We could be breathing bad air, but it's not often like 20 years later that we'll get a problem with our lungs. Or we could be drinking water that has those forever chemicals in it, the PFAS and PFOA, but it's not for like a generation later that you see hormone problems because of that. So there's often a time lag between when folks are exposed to something and when they present with a problem. And we talked about all the problems that lead causes, the cognitive and behavioral and all these health issues. But when I diagnose a kid, for example, with ADHD in clinic, the number one thing that the parent wants to know is this because of the water? And that's really hard to answer because there's been that long time lag between when the exposure happened and when the symptoms presented. And also, having something like ADHD or a learning disability or high blood pressure is also caused by lots of other things. So it's very difficult to pinpoint this was because of the water crisis. However, from the moment of recognizing that we had this population level exposure and that it wasn't just lead, that it was just a citywide bad thing, a citywide trauma, we have worked to figure out how to support people over the long term. Because remember, this is a long-term thing. We have to follow folks for a long time. And that's where the Flint Registry comes in. Wave, Flint Registry, yay! Flint Registry. So the Flint Registry, have anybody heard about the Flint Registry? Yay, awesome. So the Flint Registry was created to follow people over a long time, okay? It's called surveillance. It's to see how people are doing, not just now, but again in a year, and then again in a few years, and again for the next few decades, okay? To see how people are doing, but we're not just seeing, we're not just like, let's see how people are doing. The goal of the Flint Registry is to improve public health. So to date, the Flint Registry, what are the latest numbers? We've enrolled over 20,000 people, right? Over 20,000 people have enrolled in the Flint Registry, and we have made over 30,000 connections to really important things to improve the health and the development of folks. So, for example, we have expanded Medicaid in Flint right now, so more people get access to health care. We have lots of literacy programs, especially for little kids. We have brand new child care centers. We have nutrition support programs. We have lots of mental health care resources and trauma-informed care. So there's a lot of things that have been put into place in Flint to not see those consequences. And a lot of those things were put into place before we started to see how people were doing. So the data to see how people are doing, you can see on the Flint Registry. You go to flintregistry.org, and yeah, people are struggling. They're struggling with making ends meet. They're struggling with mental health. They're struggling with behavioral things. They're struggling with chronic diseases. Was this because of the water crisis? Maybe, but part of our work is we just want to make people better, okay? So no matter where they are, we want to make sure that we can support them and improve their future outcomes. So long answer, but go to the Flint, if you were in Flint during the water crisis, you can sign up for the Flint Registry. It's always open for enrollment, flintregistry.org. It's a short survey. Based on how folks answer that survey, they can get connected to resources. You also get a $50 thank you for signing up for the Flint Registry. Yes, hold on, come on. Whoa.
My name is Emma, and I'm from Powers Catholic High School. And as a young girl, how did you make sure your voice was heard?
I'm still a young girl, right? No, I'm just kidding. Yes. So Emma from Powers asked, as a young girl, how did I make sure that my voice was heard? I always got in trouble for speaking too much in class. I was always loud. But I'll tell you about something that I did in high school, which I talk about a little bit in the book. So I got involved in our high school environmental club. I don't know if you guys have a green club or an environmental club in high school. And because I thought all the cool kids were there, right? Yeah, all the cool kids were there. I'm like, oh, let me try this. Let me see what we can do. And we put plays on for the elementary schools about recycling and reducing and reusing. And we collected cans to recycle. And my high school environmental club advisor, who happened to be our librarian, she found out that in a city next to the city that I grew up in, I grew up in Royal Oak in Metro Detroit, and a city next to us, Madison Heights, they had an incinerator that was about to reopen. Does anybody know what an incinerator is? What does an incinerator burn? Garbage. So incinerators burn garbage. And there was an incinerator in the city, and it was burning garbage for decades. And kids in that neighborhood had higher rates of asthma because of the air quality. And the adults had higher rates of COPD, which is a respiratory problem that adults can have. And when folks would wake up in the morning and go outside, there would be a layer of black soot on their cars, okay? And this incinerator was closed for a little bit, but they were about to reopen this incinerator. So my high school environmental club leader, she's like, hey, do you guys want to learn about this? So we would meet at the local library with a community environmental group. It was called Clean Air Please. And it was led by a single mom who was a nurse, who was worried about what was happening to her community. And we listened to the concerns, and I was 13, 14 years old. And we did not have cell phones. And my parents would drop me off at the library. We're dropping you off, we'll pick you up in 2 hours, just don't get arrested in those 2 hours. Literally like a kid. And we would door knock, we would go talk to the people in the community. We would do protests about the reopening of this incinerator with the community members. I literally was younger than most of you right now. And then nothing was happening. This incinerator was literally in the backyard of an elementary school and a senior center. And finally, our local group elected one of our members to be a state representative. And the very first thing he did when he got to Lansing was pass a bipartisan bill, so Republicans and Democrats, that you cannot operate an incinerator within a certain radius of a school. Because remember, this was right next to an elementary school. And that bill passed, and that bill was signed, and that incinerator closed. And that was 30 years ago-ish. And it's still closed to this day. And so as a young person, as a super young person, once again, probably younger than many of you, I realized that I have an amazing, loud, powerful voice, okay? I also realized this connection between like what happens in the environment, like it can impact people's health. I also began to understand kind of this concept of environmental justice, that what happens in the environment, like bad things in the environment, don't affect people equally. That some folks who may be poorer or browner are more impacted by environmental conditions. But I also learned this important lesson about the power of good government, about the power of democracy, about the power of electing leaders who listen to science, who are guided by what's best for their community residents. So, that was for me a formative, foundational experience about the power of youth voice and youth activism. And we see it here all the time. We, in our work here, have really tried to institutionalize the power of community voice in everything that we do. So Flint's story, 10 years ago, our water switch happened. Do you guys know what happened in 2011, a few years before the water switch, that created the water switch? Why did the water switch happen? Why did they press that button? Whose decision was it? Hold on, let's see if somebody else can answer. Because you have all the answers.
Yeah.
Why was that button pressed?
Save money?
Who said that? Save money? Okay, why were we trying to save money? Who was in charge of the city? Was the mayor in charge of the city? What? No. Was the city council in charge of Flint then? No, who was in charge?
Some random people in state level.
Emergency managers, okay? So this is a big part of the Flint story. In 2011, so history is so much fun. If we understand history, we can figure out what's going on and how to move forward. Okay, so in 2011, Flint overnight lost democracy. What? This is crazy. We did. Overnight in 2011, we were governed by financial emergency managers, okay? So, and this was done against the will of the people, okay? So in a statewide ballot, the people of Michigan said, we don't want emergency managers running our city. That is not democratic. That is not how America is supposed to run. We elect people, they represent us, and we have a voice. Yet in city after city in Michigan, they were being taken over by emergency managers, okay? Once again, people in Michigan voted this down, but this got pushed through our legislature, which at that time was very gerrymandered. We can talk about that later, but now we are ungerrymandered. We had these emergency manager laws in lots of Michigan cities. What kind of cities do you think emergency managers were in? Major cities? Okay, what else? Poor cities, what else? Brown and black cities. So at one point in 2014, half of Michigan's African American population was under emergency managers. Detroit, Benton Harbor, Pontiac, Flint, okay? These were power grabs, okay? This was undemocratic. And these emergency managers were not accountable, not electable to the folks, and they only reported to the governor, okay? So that happened in 2011, and they came in Flint, and their job was austerity, which means to save money. Save money, save money, save money, cut costs, cut costs, cut costs. And supposedly, that is how the decision was made to change our water source from the Great Lakes, okay? I can't reiterate this enough because this is such a crazy the world. 21% of the fresh water in the world is around Michigan. And here's Flint, kind of in the middle of the largest source of fresh water in the world. So for half a century, we were getting our water from Lake Huron. We bought it from Detroit, where it was treated properly, and then it was sent on its way. But the emergency managers decided that that water was now too expensive for this predominantly poor, predominantly minority, near bankrupt city, right? And that to save money, they were going to change our water from the Great Lakes to the Flint River without proper treatment. So I don't even remember what your question was. Who's asked the question? It was about...
Female leaders.
Oh, about being young, right? I don't even know how I digressed this far. So yes, so the people of Flint were loud and heroic and organized. They knew something was wrong, and they knew something was wrong from the point that we lost democracy, okay? And it was so un-American. There was national media on the Flint story before our water switch happened, just when we were an emergency manager story, because it was so undemocratic. Oh, I totally forgot where I was going. Okay, so we lost democracy. So central to our recovery, okay, moving forward, and really kind of what we should be doing everywhere is this concept of participatory democracy, where people's voices are at the table, okay? And that's especially important in Flint, because part of our story is a story of what happens when we didn't listen to people, when people were right, but we silenced them, and they weren't at the table. When the emergency manager was subpoenaed before Congress, so he was forced to go to Congress in DC, one of the emergency managers, and it was the oversight committee where they look at all the things that happen in the country. And the chair of the oversight committee was this amazing congressman named Elijah Cummings from Maryland, who has since passed away, but he was a Flint champion. And Representative Cummings asked the emergency manager, in a congressional hearing, he's like, why didn't you listen to the people of Flint? Like, why? They were coming to you with concerns and brown water and all these problems. Like, why didn't you listen to the people of Flint? And the emergency manager said something like, I didn't have to. I didn't have to. Because he wasn't accountable. Because there was no democracy. And I share this part of the really important part in my book, because we're corroding democracy all over our country right now. It's not that different from things like gerrymandering and voter suppression and voter ID laws and mass incarceration. These are all other examples that are making it really hard for people's voice to be represented and to be at the table. So this is not a unique story, not a crazy thing that happened in Michigan and Flint. This is something that is happening all over. And we all have to be vigilant and work hard to make sure voices are at the table. So that has been really central to our work, making sure that we are listening, that making sure that we have lots of seats at the table for all kinds of voices. So in my organization, Kenyatta, she just left, but she's our director of community engagement, community implementation and engagement. And Kwan over there works with her. And these are folks from the community who are at the table. We also have a parent partner group. We have a group of parents that we've convened for like 7 years who share their lived experiences and stories and what we should be doing next. And this is where I'm getting to the answer to your question. And we have a group of kids. We have a group of amazing, amazing kids, 8 to 18. They've named themselves the Flint Youth Justice League, who are leaders, who have become national leaders in the space. One of my favorite stories is after Flint's water crisis, there was a similar water crisis in Newark, New Jersey. And our Flint kids from our Flint Youth Justice League were Zooming with kids in Newark. And they were telling them what a part per billion was and how they should sample water and what they should advocate for. And these are all young people. So once again, you guys inspire me. Your voices inspire me. Never doubt the power that your voice has and your actions have to create change. Thank you. Oh my God, now we have so many questions. Okay, I'm coming down. Oh, right here, sorry.
Hello, I'm Crystal from Mount Middle College, and my question to you would be, what advice would you give to somebody who's trying to make a change in the community but doesn't know where to start?
Oh my gosh, Crystal had an amazing question. What advice would I give to somebody who wants to make a change but doesn't really know where to start? And so I'm so lucky I get to talk to young people, you guys, all the time, and I see how much you care. You guys care about so much. There's a lot to care about, you know, climate change, democracy, women's rights, immigration. Like, there's a lot going on in the world. There's a lot to care about. And I think what I often see is like that you carry the weight of the world on your shoulders, okay? Like, you care so much and it's overwhelming, and I can see folks like almost burning out because they care so much about so many things and they don't know what to do, and it feels almost catastrophic. Like, there's just so much going on in the world. So my advice is to find your thing, okay? To find your passion. Like, what keeps you up at night? Is it climate change? Is it water rights? Is it women's pay equity? Is it the food in your cafeteria at lunch? I don't know, find your thing, okay? Find your passion, your why, I call it your North Star. And like, for me, it's kids. Like, that is my why. That's why I went to school forever. That is why I wrote this book. That is why I'm here today. My why, my passion is kids. So find your passion. That's my first bit of advice. And then my second bit of advice is to find your peeps. Find your people, okay? So my work is not about, another reason I did not want to write a book, because it is not a story about one person. This is a story about a team. It is about a village, an often unexpected village of folks that came together to do this work. And to this day, my work is only possible with an amazing, amazing team of people who are smarter than me and can help kind of do this work together. So find people who also care about your passion. And you'll find them in unexpected places. I think so often in our lives and careers, we become really siloed, which means we just hang out with people who are just like us. And like, before the water crisis, I used to hang out with a lot of pediatricians. Like, you know, that's like, I go to conferences with like pediatricians, that's who I trained with. Like, and I used to think like only pediatricians care about kids. And that's so wrong, because so do like lawyers and engineers and social workers and teachers and all kinds of folks also care about kids. So find a team, find a village, find other folks out there who care about what you care about. And I think you'd be surprised to find out that like, hey, they've been caring about this for even longer than I've been caring about it. Like, you know, I care about kids, and I care about obviously water, and I work with like all these other advocacy groups and organizations that have been doing this for a long time. So then you don't reinvent the wheel. But doing things together with other people is support, because there's good days and there's bad days when you're doing advocacy, change-making work. Even if it's a little change, it's hard. It's hard to do it alone, because there'll be moments that you need to be there to lift them up, and when they need to be there to lift you up. So find your passion, find your people, and then my next bit of advice also starts with P, is be persistent. So change often doesn't happen overnight. I think one of the biggest lessons I've learned is the need to just stay on it. You know, just stay on it, stay on it, stay on it. I sometimes call myself pleasantly persistent, or really annoying. Like, you know, it's just, you know, continuing to do the same thing. There's been many, many beautiful kind of ripple effects of what happened in Flint. I'm going to mention two. One is the Infrastructure Act, which passed Congress, was signed by the president, which is the largest federal investment in water, and it includes billions of dollars to replace lead pipes. I had a chance to testify before Congress like half a dozen times about changing the lead pipes across the country. People have been advocating for this and fighting for this before I was born. But we kept being persistent, and we took advantage of this window of opportunity to do this, and that was signed, and once again, and now that's 11 million pipes across this country are being replaced because of our persistence and being part of a larger movement. The EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, a couple months ago proposed a new water rule, a new lead and copper rule, and I was part of the press release with the head of the EPA Administrator, Director Reagan, and a lot of it was about doing things that we're doing in Michigan that we learned from Flint, about better ways to sample water and lowering the action level, and part of that rule also mandates that we replace all lead pipes in the next decade, once again, people have been trying to get these kinds of laws and regulations passed for a long time. But we took advantage of this moment and we never stopped talking. We never stopped talking to do better on behalf of our kiddos. Okay, so find your passion, be persistent, find your people. My last P, to help folks who want to create change, is to be prepared. Moments like this are opportunities to prepare you for change making. You just heard kind of about my story and my path, and that may be a playbook for you to then follow when you want to create change. Take advantage of the opportunities that come your way, especially in your amazing schools, to learn how to write an opinion piece in a newspaper, to do public speaking. I credit my public speaking with drama in high school. Like I was a total dork in high school. I did drama club. Like I loved it, but I'm comfortable on the stage. I can talk. So all those things prepared me to do this work right now. When I was in college, I did a lot of service learning, like alternative spring breaks and service things. And I had gone on one as a freshman in college. We took care of injured birds in Florida. It was awesome. It was fun. I loved giving back. When I came back to campus, the university was going to cut funding for service learning. I'm like, wait a minute, that was like such a cool experience for me. Like I really enjoyed it. Like I want to commit my career to service. So I didn't know what to do. So I wrote a letter in the college newspaper, the Michigan Daily, like a letter to the editor, and it was published. I'm like, oh wow, they published my letter about the importance of funding service learning. My last letter to the editor was in the USA Today, and the one before that was in the New York Times. But all of these things prepared me to do what I'm able to do now. So take advantage of these leadership opportunities, like raise your hand when they need somebody to organize something or lead something or do something, even if it makes you scared and even if it kind of makes you queasy and you don't want to and you don't know how to do it. You guys are all in a safe place right now to take risks and to explore new things to help prepare you to be change makers. Thank you. All right, we're going over here. Bye. You guys have to, whoever has to tell me how we're doing on time.
Hi, I'm Jocelyn from Genesee College, and I was just wondering if you have like family or friends that was affected by the water crisis. Like, even though you didn't grow up in Flint, what made you so passionate about it in the first place?
Jocelyn asked, like, why was I passionate about Flint in the first place? Do you think that you have to like live in a place to care about a place? No. So I don't. I mean, there's many reasons why I'm so passionate about this work, and I think it's most importantly grounded by kind of my job as a pediatrician. Like I literally like took an oath to protect children. That is my job. But more than that, and really kind of implicit in this story, is that all of us, no matter who we are and what we do and what we end up going into, all of us, as a member of a society and a community, have taken an oath to protect the most vulnerable among us, our children. So it doesn't matter who you are. We should all care about our kids. So when I was really busy with the water crisis and like was never home, I had two small children, my own children. I used to try to be very involved in their lives, like go to Girl Scout things and soccer practice and stuff like that. As much as I could, I tried to be, involved. But then I wasn't. I fell off the face of the earth because I was so consumed with what was going on here, doing the research, doing the advocacy work. And I was overhearing my 8-year-old talking to one of her little besties. And the other little girl asked my daughter, like, where's your mom? Like, we never see your mom anymore. Your mom, like, she used to come to all the games. She's not here anymore. And my 8-year-old daughter said, Mom is taking care of our 6,000 siblings. So cute, right? So, what if we all thought about each other's kids as our own kids? Not just because we live in a place or we look like those folks or, we're from there. This is why one of the other reasons my book is called What the Eyes Don't See. So there was a blindness to Flint. The people kind of stopped looking and stopped caring once again about Flint and Flint kids. But what if we all cared about Flint and Flint in little places as if they were our own kids. So that's my answer. Yes, coming.
My name is Reese. I'm from Powers Catholic High School. And how much did your activism change when it became more political than you personally thought?
Reese asked, how much did my activism change when it became more political than I thought? So I did this science, so I did the research that showed that kids had more lead in them, and I shared it at a press conference in my hospital, which was like a kind of an academic no-no. Like when you do research as a scientist, you're supposed to publish in journals, but that takes a long time, and I didn't have a long time. Nobody had a long time, so I decided to share that research publicly. I've gotten so many accolades that have been mentioned, but I think my favorite award that I received was from MIT. They gave me a disobedience award for being academically disobedient, for not going through that peer review process, which takes time, but for publicly sharing the science. So I knew that was kind of political. I'm like, oh, I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing, but I need to share this research because people are in harm's way. But when I shared my research, like I was sharing like science, I was sharing statistics, I was sharing like, graphs and maps, and it was like really basic science. Like after the water switch, more kids had higher lead levels, and I felt great. I'm like how can science be political? Like this is being naive here. Like how can science be political? Like it's literally like common sense science. We have so much lead in the water. Like there's more lead in kids. So I felt, great about that, like for about a half an hour. I'm like, how can anybody dispute science? Like, can you guys imagine, like being in the middle of a public health crisis and not listening to science? That's a joke because we just went through COVID, which was this international public health crisis, and we didn't do a good job listening to science either. But within a half hour of that press conference, I was attacked. It became very political. The entire state of Michigan, different arms of the state, the federal government said I was wrong. They said I was causing near hysteria, which is sexist, hysterical, that word. They said I was splicing and dicing numbers, that I was an unfortunate researcher. So they went after me and they went after my science. Just like they had gone after everybody who'd raised any concerns about Flint. So I should have expected it. Because the moms and the pastors and the journalists and the scientists, everybody who had raised their hand when it came to saying anything about Flint was also attacked. But I'm like, I'm just sharing science. So it became political fairly quickly. And I wrote this book in the first person to have you kind of be in my shoes and to go through the roller coaster of emotions that I was going through. And at that point, it was hard. It was so hard. Like I felt like this big. I felt defeated. I felt tiny. I'm like, who am I? I am a 5-foot brown immigrant woman going against some of the most powerful forces in this country. And maybe I'm wrong. So there was also this sense of imposter syndrome, which a lot of women will go through over time, and men too. Maybe I'm not an expert. Maybe my science is wrong. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. Maybe I should have just kept my eyes closed and gone about my busy business. Do you think that's what I should have done? So fortunately and fairly quickly, I began to realize the politics and these hacks, this wasn't about me. They can go after Mona all they want, but this was about something bigger than me. This was about my why. What's my why again? Kids. This was about my kids. And that kind of realization kind of lifted me up and gave me the courage to fight back and really transcend politics. It also enabled me to work with folks that I didn't agree with. So I had to work with all kinds of folks in the former administration that was responsible for the water crisis because they were still in power, and I had to make sure that kids got what they needed. So my kind of constituency is children. None of this work is partisan. It's not about Democrats or Republicans. For me, it's about kids. The Flint Registry has, the funding is from Congress. So every year we have to advocate to continue the funding to do this long-term work. And because of the bridges we've been able to build, because of the kind of constant like check-ins, the Flint Registry funding is completely bipartisan supported. Everybody from the Michigan delegation, led by Congressman Kildee, has signed on. Democrats, Republicans, everybody has signed on and understands why this work is important. So science, medicine, public health, everything is political, but it shouldn't be partisan. Good question. All right, I'm gonna go all the way back and come back. You're right here.
My name is Makai from Genesee College. I was wondering, what do you do when kids get infected with lead poisoning?
Oh, okay. What do I do? Makai from Genesee Early College asked, what do I do when kids get infected with lead poisoning? So the first thing that we do is stop the exposure. So we try to identify where they're getting exposed from. Is it peeling paint in their house? Is it like a toy that they're chewing on that has lead? Oh my God, did you hear the most recent kind of issue with lead? It was in those applesauce pouches that like toddlers were eating. The cinnamon from Ecuador had lead in them. So there's, lead is found in lots of different things that continue to be used this day, lots of imported things because our regulations suck and they're inadequate. So the first thing that we do is be detectives. We try to find where the kid is getting the lead exposure and try to stop that. And that all involves work with the public health department. There's these environmental health investigators that often have to go to people's houses and also go to wherever the kid is hanging out, be it childcare or grandma's house or whatever, to see where the lead may be coming from so that the kid isn't further exposed. So that's the first thing that we do. Just like what we did in the water crisis, stop drinking the water, okay? Use filters, use bottled water, stop the ongoing exposure. So after a kid has been exposed to lead, and by and large, it's almost impossible to grow up in this country today without being exposed to lead, because we used it in so many things and we never took it away. So everybody has lead in them, but they shouldn't, okay? They absolutely shouldn't, and we should move towards making sure we eliminate that exposure. But once kids are exposed, we support them, we support their family. Good nutrition is really important. If a kid has an empty stomach or if they're deficient in certain nutrients like calcium, vitamin C, or iron, they absorb more lead. So that's why a lot of our early work was making sure that kids had good nutrition and we could bolster a lot of their supports around nutrition. And then we do a lot of developmental screening. We get those kids involved in something called early on in Michigan, early intervention. We check on their development. The sooner that we see a potential problem, the quicker we can get them into services. I want to reiterate, and this is what I try to share all the time, just because people were exposed to lead does not mean that they are going to have all those problems that we talked about, okay? That is what we have been doing around the clock in Flint, putting into place a lot of supportive things so we do not see those consequences, okay? Just because, you can have two kids exposed to the same amount of lead. One kid goes to Harvard and one kid has school problems, okay? Sometimes you never know who's gonna have problems or who's not gonna have problems. So that's why it's important to put into place lots of other things that we know that science tells us makes kids healthy and successful, like exposure, like good food, nutrition, great schools, early education, supportive families, all these other things we know are really good for kids. All right, I think we have time. Oh, we don't have time for any more questions, right? All right, oh my God, you guys are amazing. Let's give you guys a round of applause. Yay! Thank you. I can't wait for all of you to be change makers. If you can get free stuff over there. If you think you might be eligible for the Flint Registry, if you lived in Flint during the water crisis, you can sign up or take it home for your families to sign you up on. We also have some information about Argus Kids, which is the coolest thing ever. We're prescribing cash to mamas and babies to eliminate poverty. We have amazing teddy bears. But once again, thank you. You guys are all an inspiration. Thank you.